Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the carrot door basket, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description. There you will find both right and left-handed video tutorials, and if you scroll down just below that, you'll find a link to the written pattern, as well as all the supplies you need and any other tutorials that I'll reference here today. Now, as you can see, this is a great big carrot, and it's also a hanging door basket. There's a loop on the back, so you can hang it just like you would hang a wreath from a door or a hook wherever you'd like. It does use a few things besides yarn. We have Bernat blanket for this gorgeous orange color, and then of course you need a crochet hook. For this one, it's a USM 9mm. You'll also need some fiberfill stuffing, a 5.7-inch or around 6-inch sized foam ball for artificial flowers. I'll show you the one in here in a moment. And then, of course, some artificial greenery to do the gorgeous top here. These are some artificial boxwood bushes, actually, that I purchased. I also recommend that you have some stitch markers for assembly, and you'll also want to use or have on hand a large yarn needle, one of these with a great big eye so that you can fit the Bernat blanket through it. Again, links to everything are included at the link in the description. First, let's take a look at the finished carrot door basket. This is crocheted from the bottom up. The first round is a round, but after that, it's worked in rows of linked double crochet up towards the top. The last round is made up of decreases to pull it in over the top of the carrot. And then there is a drawstring here. You can see crocheted and woven through that last round. Inside the carrot here, if you can kind of pull it apart so we can take a peek, you can see there is that green foam ball I was talking about at the top. And below and around that, it's all filled with fiberfill stuffing. Then, after the stuffing and the ball are put in, and the top is gathered closed with the drawstring here, then in that space left is where you add this beautiful greenery to create the top of your carrot. Make sure you spread those out nice and wide so you get a really great lush look. Then, you're ready to hang it on your front door or wherever you'd like. Okay, so let's get started with the crochet portion. We start with round 1 by making a magic circle. So I'm going to wind the yarn over my finger twice, then insert my hook under both of those loops, grab the loop furthest back, pull it just under the other one there, and yarn over for a quick little slip stitch there. That will help hold the ring together. Then I'm going to go ahead and work a chainless starting double crochet into the ring. So what I want to do is pull up my loop to about the height of a double crochet and then secure it at the top with the finger on top of the hook here. Then I'm simply going to wind that loop around my hook as if it was basically just like that. And then I'm going to go right into that loop. I'm going to go ahead and pull my finger out of the way here, but I want to go into that loop and make sure that that tail end is also over my hook. Then I find my working yarn here. I'm going to yarn over, pull a loop up through that magic circle, yarn over, pull through 2. Basically that second one is pulling it behind there, and then yarn over and pull through again. And there we have our chainless starting double crochet in the loop. If you prefer, you can substitute a chain 3. Then we're going to work 5 double crochets in the ring. So essentially we want to have a total of 6 double crochets all worked into this magic ring. So again, if you prefer not to use the chainless starting double crochet, you can use a different double crochet substitute, whatever you like to use. But just make sure that as you work into that ring that you're also working over that tail end, so that we can pull the whole thing closed when we get to the end of our 5 stitches. So let's see here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got one more. We need 6 total. Our starting one and then 5 double crochets. There we are. So now we've got our 6 made, and we can simply pull that tail end to close up the ring here at the bottom of our carrot. There we go. Sometimes it helps if you sort of secure it with your fingers there as you pull. Alrighty. Now what we need to do is go ahead and slip stitch in that first one. So we're already bringing it up into that cone shape for our carrot. So I'm going to go ahead and find that first stitch we made. You can see right now my carrot wants to be wrong side out, but that's fine. We'll turn it right side out here in a minute. Just going to go ahead and slip stitch there. And then we'll go ahead and pop that little carrot end there right side out. Now, if you'd like, this would be a good time to go ahead and weave in that initial end, or you can simply tuck it right into the base of your carrot there. With this fuzzy yarn, that magic circle should stay nice and closed as long as you've pulled it nice and tight. So now we're ready for row 2, and we are going to be switching to rows for the rest of this pattern. That was the only round. So to begin row 2, I'm going to start with another chainless starting double crochet, this time right into that first stitch. So I pull up that loop again, yarn over with that loop, go right into that first stitch with my hook, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. And now what I'd like to do is go ahead and put a stitch marker right in the top of that first stitch. There we are. It just makes it a little bit easier to work into when I come back around for the next row. Then we are going to work a linked double crochet in that same stitch, in that first stitch again. So to work a linked double crochet off of a chainless starting double crochet, you just want to find basically whatever loop there is in front that you can get your hook under, about halfway down the length of the stitch. Pull up a loop through there, and then go right back down into that same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop again, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So that is our first linked double crochet. Now we're going to link double crochet in the next stitch, and now we have that horizontal bar right there in the middle of our previous stitch. So we simply go under that bar with our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, then go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So now we've made our second one. So now we're ready for our repeat that will take us the rest of the way around this row. We work 2 linked double crochets in the next stitch and a linked double crochet in the stitch after that twice. So let's go ahead and do that together. We're going to go right under that horizontal bar again, yarn over and pull up a loop, find the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So now we need another one in that stitch. We go right back from the top, basically, of under that horizontal loop there, yarn over and pull up a loop. See, if we look at it this way, it is horizontal. I like to actually turn it while I'm crocheting it. It's a little easier. But if we look at it the way we normally would, it is a horizontal bar there. So we've pulled up that loop. So now we need to go back into that stitch for our second one. And then, of course, work it off like a normal double crochet. And then we 1 linked double crochet in the next stitch. So again, we just go right under that middle bar there, pull up a loop, and then to the next stitch and pull up a loop and finish off our double crochet. So we've got just 3 stitches left here for row 2. So we'll go ahead and make those together. We need to put 2 linked double crochets into the next stitch. Oop, here we are. Sometimes working with these great big bulky yarns, it can get a little overwhelming. Just take your time. And also, as you're making this project, when you are working with a bulky yarn like this, it's important to rest your hands and let them sort of stretch every once in a while. You don't want to marathon a jumbo yarn for too long because it can be really tiring on the hands. All right, so there we go. Did I do that as a linked one? I did. I was afraid I was talking and distracted myself too much. So we've got our 2 there, and now we're ready for 1 in the very last stitch. So there we go. The instinct is to yarn over, but we don't need to with these linked double crochets. So I'll go right there in that last one. And that should finish off row 2 with a total of 9 stitches. So let's go back and check our work. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And because we've switched to rows, we're not going to join now. Joining linked double crochet stitches can be quite difficult. And so it's just easier to do a seam up the back of our carrot for this one. So I'm not going to join with a slip stitch here. I'm going to instead turn and work row 3 back the other way. So row 3, we start again with the chainless starting double crochet. And you can see now I'm working basically from the inside of the carrot, totally fine. So I pull up my loop, make my chainless starting double crochet right in that first stitch. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my stitch marker in the top of that one. I just really love using stitch markers, especially when you've got a really fuzzy or textured yarn where it can be difficult to see your stitches. These can be a really big boon and a help. There we go. So now we need a linked double crochet in that same first stitch. So we just find that bar there, sort of halfway down that post, yarn over and pull up a loop, go right back into that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. See, I tried to set myself up with some extra yarn here, and now it's creeping up on me. There we go. Now to continue, we're going to link double crochet in the next 2 stitches. So we go under that horizontal bar again, and find the next stitch, finish off that double crochet, And then under that horizontal bar from that stitch, in the next stitch, pull up a loop and work that one off. There we go. And now we're ready for our repeat for row 2, or excuse me, for row 3. It will be 2 linked double crochets in the next stitch, linked double crochet in the next 2 stitches. So 2 in the next stitch, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. That's the repeat that takes us across row 3 for a total of 12 stitches. So I'll see you when we get to the end of row 3. Okay, so this is what your carrot should look like after row 3. You can see here we're not connecting those rows again. We're just turning the work back and forth. You can see that line created by the linked double crochet there on the inside of the carrot. So now we're ready to turn and make row 4. And indeed, the rest of the carrot is just going to use these same stitches again, but let's make a few of them together again just so we can really get a handle on that linked double crochet. I'm going to start row 4 with another chainless starting double crochet right in that very first stitch. Let's see, and I already pulled the stitch marker from the row previous. We'll go ahead and put it right in here. There we go. And then we linked double crochet right back in that same first stitch. There we are. Then, to continue with row 4, we linked double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So you may have picked up that we're kind of doing, if you've made a lot of circles or other flat increases like that, it's sort of the similar thing where we're gradually increasing the number of stitches between our increases, between the stitches where we have 2 stitches worked. And that's exactly the principle we're doing here. We're just increasing by 3 stitches every round, or excuse me, every row, I should say. So even though we're working back and forth in rows and not making a flat circle or anything, we want to maintain increasing 3 stitches every row. So when you come to the instructions, it's mainly a matter of seeing exactly where those increases lie, where those 2 stitches worked into 1 stitch are worked, where those are worked in each row, because I do move those around a little bit so that we don't get a line of increases going up the carrot. So let's see, I've been chatting away here, so I may have lost my place just a little bit. I'm going to take that last stitch out. I feel like I screwed that one up somewhere. Let's see. Just going to go ahead and pull that one out real gently. There we go. So we are working on row 4. So we've got our chainless starting double crochet, our linked double crochet, both in that first stitch, linked double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So I've got 2 there. I need 1 more. So we'll put that next one in. And then, of course, that brings us to our repeat. 2 linked double crochets in the next, linked double crochet in the next 3. 1, 2, 3. 2 linked double crochets in the next, and then 1, 2, 3. 1 in each of those last 3 stitches. So at the end of row 4, you should have a total of 15 stitches. All right, and this is what your carrot should look like at the end of row 4. You can see how those linked double crochets have created not only a very solid fabric without any gaps, but it also creates these great horizontal ridges, which really give it that carroty look that you expect. So rows 5 through 17 are all pretty much what we've been doing. Like I say, we're just moving those increases around a little bit so that we can shift them around so we don't get a line of increases going up our carrot that's really obvious to the eye. So we're going to keep making these linked double crochet rows through row 17, and then row 18 is going to be our decreases. So let's go ahead and make row 5 together because I want to finish up on an odd numbered row before I make those decreases. So row 5, we're going to be turning and working from the inside of the carrot again. And we're going to go ahead and pull up and make our chainless starting double crochet. And again, if you don't prefer to use that chainless starting double crochet, you can absolutely substitute with a chain 3 or a chain 2 and then a double crochet in that stitch and not count the chain 2 as a stitch. Whatever you like to do for your double crochet substitute is totally fine. You just want to make sure you've got some sort of bar there that you can grab. If it's a chain 3, you can just put it through the center of those 3 chains when you need to pull up that next loop there to make that first linked double crochet. So for row 5, we do need a linked double crochet right in that first stitch. That's our first increase right there. We won't always increase in the first stitch. Like I say, those do get moved around a little bit later in the pattern, but essentially it's just adding three more stitches to every round. So we've got our chainless starting double crochet and linked double crochet in the first stitch. Then we're going to link double crochet in the next 4 stitches. If you remember in the last row, it was 3 stitches in between every increase. This row, it's going to be 4 stitches between each increase. And that is the basic plan for this. Once in a while, we just happen to split those increases at the beginning and the end so that we can locate them around our carrot for a little bit better look here. So there we go. Let's see, we've got our first two, 1, 2, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, so we need one more. Linked double crochet here in the next stitch, and again, I'm just working from the inside of the carrot because it's row 5. And then we've got ready for our repeat. 2 linked double crochets in the next stitch, linked to double crochet in the next 4 stitches. So 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. And that will get us all the way across row 5 with a total of 18 stitches. So this is what your carrot should look like at the end of row 5. You can see I've come across the inside of my carrot here, as we can tell by the end, and we're now ready for row 6. But as I said, rows 6 through 17 are all pretty much what we've been doing, just adding 3 increases in every row. So we're going to go ahead and move on to row 18. Row 18 is worked from the right side of the carrot, and we're going to start with our chainless starting double crochet again, but this time it's going to be the first part of a decrease, and this is the other special stitch used in this pattern. We're going to work a chainless starting double crochet, 2 together in those first 2 stitches. We basically want to decrease this last round here by half. So we're going to start just as we normally would with our loop pulled up here and secured on top of our hook so that we can yarn over with the loop itself, go right into that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2, but stop. Don't release that loop just yet. We've got 2 loops left on the hook. I'm going to yarn over again, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and now I will go ahead and yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops to make our decrease. So again, if you would prefer not to use that technique, you could instead just simply chain 2 and then work a double crochet in the second stitch and not count that chain 2 as a stitch, and you will have worked essentially a decrease right there. However you'd like to do it is totally fine. Basically, a double crochet 2 together. And that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of this row. We're just double crocheting 2 together around. Now we don't want to work these as linked double crochet stitches because we're going to be using this row to weave in our drawstring. So if you haven't made a regular double crochet 2 together before, let me go ahead and demo that here now. While I've got it here on my hook, we're going to yarn over, go to the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over, go to the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through all 3 to finish. So keep doing that all the way across for row 18, and I'll see you when we get to the end of row 18. And this is what your carrot should look like at the end of row 18, although on a much larger scale. In row 17, you would have 54 stitches, so in row 18, you would have a total of 27. Of course, I've just got my little swatch-sized one here. But you can see how that's really pulled in the top of our carrot. So now we're actually done with our crocheting, except for making a chain drawstring. So what we want to do is cut our yarn, but we don't want to cut it with just the usual 6 inches to weave in. We want to leave a long enough piece of yarn to seam up our carrot. So for me, I like to just sort of visually measure that out. Of course, on the full-size carrot, it's a lot more yarn than on my little guy here, but I will just lay that yarn out the length of the seam about 3 times there. There we are. And I find that that's a little generous, but it always gives me enough. And that way I don't come up short. So I'll go ahead and cut my yarn right there and set that skein aside. And then I'm simply going to go ahead and pull this loop up and through. If you want to grab that yarn first and pull it through that way, you can, but I like to just go ahead and pull up on that loop. I'm going to go ahead and set that hook aside. It's actually a little easier to do this with the fingers. All right, so now this is where those stitch markers come in really handy. So let's bring these guys in. What we want to do is go ahead and use our stitch markers to match up our rows here so that as we're sewing, we don't end up creating, one of these situations where we've sewn too much on one side and not enough on the other, and we've got a weird gap. Using your stitch markers to help line up your seams before you actually start sewing can be really helpful. And you don't have to do it, too close together. Every few inches is totally fine, but you just want to make sure that you get those seams totally lined up even there. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach these in a couple places here, and that's probably enough here on my little guy. So we'll set that aside. And then, I've got one more there in that first stitch. That might be a good one to go ahead and use right there at the top. Alrighty, so now I've got my yarn end, and this is where I'm going to need that great big yarn needle. Finding yarn needles like this, you want to make sure you have one big enough to fit this jumbo yarn. So these are really handy to have. And again, I will have a link for that at the link in the description. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my end there on my needle. And now I'm simply going to whip stitch this seam closed. It's the simplest sewing method. With this yarn, it's fuzzy enough and bulky enough. You're not going to see the individual stitches, so we don't have to do anything too fancy. I'm just going to come from behind here on the opposite side. And just take your time with it and pull that right on through. And then I'll go in about halfway down that row, pop up halfway down that row, and pull the yarn through again. Just a simple whip stitch. I always think of it as just kind of whipping right through the fabric. And then it can help too if you find those horizontal lines and kind of get those lined up there. But find wherever it looks good, wherever the needle wants to go. And just gently seam this together. And as you come to those stitch markers, you can take those out, of course. Just go right through both layers of the fabric here. And we're just going to seam it all the way back until we get to row 1. And then you can weave in this end, which can be a little tricky. But again, with this bulky yarn, you can hide that pretty well, especially here on the back of our carrot. So I am almost the end of my little sample-sized carrot here. So I'm just going to get through these last few rows here. A little bit more right here at the end. This is our last row before we get to that round. We don't need to sew that up, of course. That was fixed in crochet, so that should do it. We've got a nice solid seam there that isn't poking through. So now I just need to take this yarn end and weave it in, and then we're ready to make our drawstring and assemble our carrot. The last bit of crocheting is simply making the hanging loop and drawstring, which is essentially just a long line of chains here. I've made a shorter one for my little sample, but for the full-sized one, you want to make it at least 22 inches long, a little bit longer if you want a longer hanging loop. So after we've got that made and we just finished off the ends there, still got my tail ends, I'm going to go ahead and insert one of these in my yarn needle here. Can be a little challenge even with these big needles, but just take your time and get that through there. There we go. And now what we want to do is we want to find that seam. So luckily I sewed it well enough I have to actually kind of feel for it here. There we are. So there's my seam right in back. And I'm just going to pick a point right in that last row and insert my needle right between two of these posts. Then I want to come up on the other side of that post and back down and up and down. And I'm just weaving it right between the final posts here of that last round. We want to kind of find the biggest space there. Sometimes that's at the bottom of those posts and those decreases. And keep going all the way around. And it's going to get a little tight. So then you can take a break and pull that through partially. Make sure you don't pull too close to that edge. You don't want to accidentally end up pulling it all the way through, and then you have to add the needle to the other side and reweave. But then you can come back in and just start going back and forth right between those posts. There we are. And then when you come to the end, you may have some, you don't want to necessarily go back in. You want to make sure it's coming out. So if you have to leave a stitch in there, totally fine. That's basically what we want. We just want both of the ends of this drawstring coming out at the back of our carrot. There we are. Got a little twisted up as it was going, but no problem. It is through. So now we've got our drawstring, and we don't want to pull it tight just yet because we've still got some stuffing to do. But you do want to go ahead and basically weave these ends into each other so that you've got it closed. If you want to, if you don't want to do that, you could just tie it in a double knot. It is, of course, a hanging loop, so it's not necessarily going to show. But for the sake of time right now, I'm just going to go ahead and tie it together. You could definitely take your time and weave those ends in much more nicely. There we are. But for the sake of demonstration, now it is together. And that becomes, you can see here, our hanging loop for our door. So now it's time to turn this little carrot basket into our full-fledged carrot. So you can see I've got my ends stuck in there. I didn't even bother to weave them in because, again, we just need more stuffing. So that's less stuffing I need. But then you want to grab your fiber fill. Okay, so this is too much fiber fill for our little carrot, but you will need a fair bit for the full-size carrot. So I like to just tear it up a little bit before I insert it in projects. That way I don't get any weird lumpy shapes. If I can make smaller bits, it just seems to stuff a little better. And then just go ahead and start stuffing the fiber fill into your carrot. And you want to keep stuffing it until it's nice and firm. You don't want it to be heavy, but you do want it to be sort of firm. And you can use your hook a little bit if you need to really help it get down there and help you create that that really nice carroty shape. So as you stuff it, what you want to make sure to do is leave enough room at the top to insert the green foam ball. Now, I showed you earlier in this video what that looked like inside our full-sized one. Obviously, I can't fit a 6-inch ball in this little guy, so I brought over this tiny little foam ball that I just happen to have from another craft. So like I said, we want to make sure to leave enough room in there so you can kind of create a nest for it if need be, and then just squeeze it right in here. And luckily, this one seems to be fitting our little sample barely, but you should have a slightly easier time with the green one. It should still, however, be pretty tight in there. You want it to be nice and firm. And then, if need be, and I found this to be true on the full-size one, I wanted to take a little bit more stuffing and just sort of round it out there along the edges to maintain that great carrot shape. So you can just sort of tuck that right in there along the sides, and it helps just kind of create little lines with it right along the sides of your little ball there so that we get that, that really nice shape. We don't want to stretch it out. We do want to be able to pull this in, but we just want it to look really good. So take your time and add a little extra stuffing wherever you think you might need some. There we go. You can see the great thing about those linked double crochets, it's created such a solid fabric. We're really not seeing that fiber fill peek through at all. I love that stitch for projects like this. So once you've got your stuffing sort of all arranged the way you like, then it's time to go ahead and pull on that drawstring. So we just want to carefully start pulling in on those edges so that our carrot comes up over the top like a real carrot there. There we go. So we just kind of pull those in until it's right about where you want it. And if you feel like you need to secure this really tightly, or if it's gotten a little too loose or it doesn't want to stay for you, a little trick is to find that little section there. You can see this is the drawstring on the other side of this stitch. After you've got it pulled up tight, you can just slip that right under that other loop. We shouldn't have our ends in the way, of course, on our finished one, but there you go. And that will help hold it together even stronger. So now you've just got that little bit left at the top, so we're ready to add our greenery. Now, obviously, this full-size greenery is a bit too big for this carrot, but I think you get the idea. Basically, you would take your greenery and go ahead and start pushing it down through that green foam ball inside the carrot. You'll want to start in the middle and sort of work your way out to the edges so you get a really nice full look. I found spacing these stems about 1 inch apart gave me a really good look. I'm just going to tuck this one in here in our side so you kind of get the idea. But you just want to stuff that down in the ball and then make sure to bend out the leaves of your greenery so that it looks nice and lush and full. So that's how to crochet the carrot door basket, which again, you'll find for free on mooglyblog.com using Bernat blanket and a USM hook and a few other really fun supplies. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.